let's start with our today's session. So till now what we have done, we have understand the actual internal Spring Security flow of authentication, and now we are going to start with the actual customization and implementing authentication by our own. So till now we are going to secure one of the bank application. So to start with the banking application UI part, we need couple of APIs which are responsible for providing the data from your actual backend application. So if you can see in this particular slide, so I have highlighted one contact and notice API. So these two endpoints are basically our public endpoints which do not require any authentication, and the contact endpoint will basically saves your submission from the contactors page to the database, and fetches your general notices from the database to display on the cloud on the UI. And these are the two endpoints which are basically the public endpoint and do not want authentication. So let me just move to our next slide. So these are the couple of endpoints that we will be needing to be secure. So first one is the account endpoint, and this basically fetches the logged in user account details from the database, and the balance API, which basically fetches the balance of the user and transaction history. Third is the loans to fetch whether the logged in user has an active loan details, and the next is the cards to fetch the credit or debit card details. So let's just move to the IntelliJ and see how we are going to implement this. So let's see how we are going to implement this. So first let me just close this particular project and just go to the Explorer. We will just do a copy. So let's just close the current project, and what we are going to do is copy and paste this particular project and rename it to Security Sec 2, and we are going to start with our section 2. Now what we are going to do inside this particular project, we will be first going to the settings part. So I'll just edit a notepad, and we will be just going to put to Spring Security Sec 2 and Control S. Then we will just go to our IntelliJ and open this particular project. I'll just copy it, the actual path, open, paste, click on Spring Security Sec 2 and just okay. So now first we are going to rename this particular package. So refactor, rename all directories to Security Sec 2 refactor. Then we are going to rename this main application class to Spring Security Section 2. Then just verified that this test class is also renamed, so we will also rename this particular class and Spring Security Sec 2 application. Okay, and we will just take build.gradle part. So from the build.gradle we are fine, no changes, and let's just reload from disk. Okay, so now we are good, and we are just going to delete this particular user controller from here. Okay, so let's just create a couple of controllers. The first is account controller. So I'll just click on package and click on the class, class account controller, and then I'm going to again create a next controller, which is cards controller. Then I'll just create another class which is notices controller. Then next is our balance controller. Next is contacts controller. And the last one is the loans controller. Okay. Okay. So we are good from the controller. We have created this we have created this 6 classes. Let's just add some code. So I'll just go to accounts, add a REST controller, add request mapping. So I'll just add here accounts, and inside this I'm going to create a string get accounts. Here the account details, and I'll just put get mapping and accounts slash details, and I'll just put API v1 for versioning, clear versioning, and I'll go to balance and add a REST controller, add request mapping, balance API v1, and public get balance. Same for cards and contact. So I'm just putting the dummy. We will do the actual implementation later on. I'll just copy paste loans Okay, so now we are good. We have added a couple of dummy data. Now let's just run the application. So we have the application.yaml, and inside this we have set the security username and password as admin and admin. Now let's just start the application and see what all endpoints we have. Let me just open my browser. And okay, so our application is now running fine. I'll just go to localhost 8080 and just put let me just copy one of the API from account controller API v1 details, and I'll just go to here, account 1 details. Okay, so we are good. Our API is secured. Let me just go to contacts API v1 details. So I'll just go to here, contacts API v1 details. Okay, so why details API is basically secured? We have not done anything, but we want this particular API or couple of APIs from contacts and notices to be public. Now we need to understand the what actual implementation is basically running. So as of now, the problem inside our application is the Spring Security is trying to protect all the APIs by default. But in real world application, we don't always want every single endpoint to be secured in this way. So often we needs to customize the Spring Security behavior on the business requirement. So basically we customize anything. We first need to understand which pieces of code inside the Spring Security is responsible for the default behavior. So to understand the default configuration, I'm going to open a class inside the Spring Security framework, which is servlet web security auto configuration. Okay, so now inside this class we are more interested in the default security filter chain. Okay, so if you want to customize the Spring Security behavior, we must define our own security filter chain. So if you focus on this line number 83, http dot authorize http request. So first you can see the security filter chain is being returned, being of Spring Security filter chain, and the input parameter is the http security. So this particular thing is used to define the authorization rules, and inside this method http authorize http request is defined for your authorization rule. So right now if you can focus on this particular lambda expression, request dot any request dot authenticated. So every request which you have created inside the controller will be authenticated. So no any exclusion of your API is there by default. The next is the form login. So form login is basically, this enables the default security login page, which you can see. This is the security login page. So this is by default triggered, and whenever you access a secured endpoint from your browser, you will get redirect to the login page, and after credentials you enter, the access will be granted. So this behavior is enabled because of the form login. The next is the HTTP basics. So this enables the basic authentication. So in this, credentials are sent inside the HTTP header, and they are basically the base 64 encoded. So no login page would be invoked, and this is commonly used in the API to API communication tools like Postman or automated systems. So, and what is this with default? So if you go inside this with default, you are inside this customizer, interface. So you'll notice it is just returning an empty lambda. So it means it is use the default configuration. Okay, and if I go back, this is the basically returning the security filter chain object, which is generated as a Spring Bean. And here's the something very important. If you define your own security filter chain bean, Spring Security default configuration will fall back or fall back off completely. That means you are now fully responsible for defining every security rule. Okay, so I hope you understand till now, and let's move to our next part.